Welcome. My name is Justin, and I am an addict. I have been actively working the steps in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013, and am grateful to be sober one day at a time, thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships and identify with addiction with such variety as alcoholism, drugs, food, sex, gambling, theft, just to name a few. Each Friday at noon Central Time, we hold a live lunch hour speaker meeting with a recovering addict from anywhere on earth, pertaining to any or no faith tradition, and with any background, who shares their experience, strength, and hope on a specified recovery topic of their choice. They share for 20 to 25 minutes on that topic, and then the live audience gets the opportunity to ask questions of that speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. Before I introduce our guest speaker for today, I just want to do a quick update on plans for RECO12. Beginning March 4th, we start the 12-week series on each of the 12 steps of recovery. And as of right now, we only have 2 open steps, and those are steps 5 and step 8. So if you or anybody you know is passionate about either of those steps and would love to share on that step, please contact me at RECO12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12pod@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to talk to them and get that set up. Donations and podcast ratings and reviews are greatly appreciated, and details on doing that will be in the chat of the live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast. And we received a new review this week from Kenny B, who said this about RECO12. One of the best tools I can have in my recovery toolbox. Thanks for spreading hope. I'm so thankful for the RECO12 podcast. Thanks, Kenny B. We are thankful for you and those kind words. Now we look forward each week to receiving the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for the 88th RECO12 speaker meeting, Cathy M, whose topic is Keep Coming Back No Matter What. Here's a little bit about Cathy. Cathy is 65 and retired. She lives in Shreveport, Louisiana. She has degrees in psychology and nursing and was a commercial airline pilot for a major airline with her husband. Cathy has 26 years of sobriety in AA, 17 years abstinence with food, and 6 years in Al-Anon, and a year and a half in emotional sobriety meetings. She has been in OA 47 years, AA 44 years, and is married with 2 stepchildren and 2 granddaughters. And she tells me that this is the happiest time of her life and that she is very grateful and feels very blessed. Take it away, Cathy. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cathy. I'm a very grateful, recovering compulsive overeater and alcoholic. And as was said, I have 17 years of back-to-back abstinence and 26 years of sobriety, to which I'm very grateful to people like you, the 12 steps, and my higher power, whom I choose to call God. Before your eyes glaze over, I want you to remember 3 things. One is keep coming back to your meetings, whichever you go to, no matter what. Even if you don't want to, you think it's not working, never, ever, ever quit. The second thing is avail yourself of all possible help, which includes or can include counseling, medication, treatment, other programs, other self-help ideas. On page 133 of the Big Book, it says, although God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable. And the third thing I want to do is give you hope. I know I used to be very miserable, and I would cling to anyone that seemed happy, and I am happier than I've ever been in my life. I really should be dead, actually, the way I was going. And instead, I have a wonderful, full life, and more than happiness, I have freedom, because I'm not always happy, but I have probably more happiness than not. Freedom from bondage, the back of the Big Book, page 544 says, the medical profession would probably tell me I was conditioned for my addictions by the things that happened to me in my childhood. But the programs taught me that I'm the result of the way I reacted to what happened to me as a child. And what's more important is the 12 steps have taught me I can experience a change in the reaction that will allow me to match calamity with serenity. So it's not so much what happened, but how I react to it. There were quite a few unfortunate things that did happen to me. I was born on Long Island, New York, in a little town called Uniondale. This is a picture of it. And if you notice the address, it says 660. That's one digit less than 666. It was pretty cray-cray. It was very chaotic and dysfunctional. My father, I was close to. He was a World War II veteran, electrical engineer, and he had a very successful consulting engineering firm in the defense industry. That was my first diploma of many to come as a perfectionist and external validator, shall we say. My mother, bless her heart, was the identified patient in the family. She was a compulsive overeater, obese, a hoarder, a rager. There was physical and emotional abuse, and yet she could sometimes be the most wonderful, giving, loving, kind person. So it was confusing. I was the youngest of 5 children. My sister was an opera singer and sang at the Metropolitan Opera House. She was like a mother to me. My next brother was Paul, and he was gay when being gay wasn't cool, which conflicted with my father because he was very straight. My middle brother, John, eventually died of alcoholism and addiction. He was a successful contractor. And my brother, Ken, had many struggles, and I'm grateful to say he ended up becoming a major airline captain on a different airline than me. When I was young, up to puberty, I was a good kid, on the quiet side, sensitive, into gymnastics, ballet. I studied ballet at Lincoln Center in New York City. I did some modeling. And there were 2 major things that were a blow to me young. One is that I was sexually abused by a neighbor and a relative at 4 and 8. And the second is my sister was basically kicked out of the house for reasons I won't go into. But that was the first time I remember feeling anxiety, almost lightheaded anxiety, and my rudder was gone. In adolescence, I stopped ballet. I got into guitar. Here you can see the old hippie times, and I started gaining weight. I didn't get really much heavier than this, but I was used to being very thin and light. And in my day, Twiggy was big, if you even remember that model. And so I was very upset about gaining weight. My mother found OA, and I went with her. Unfortunately, she was constitutionally incapable of being honest with herself. She was not at fault. She seemed to have been born that way, and she was unable to recover. By the grace of God, thank God, I latched on with both hands, and I never left. I went to Hofstra University, and I graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a degree in psych, and I wanted to go on and become a psychologist. My father was not into that. He was into the sciences and math. And so my last semester, I took a private pilot license for fun. And my instructor was a World War II fighter pilot, and he encouraged me to go into flying. And it was just about as simple as that. I investigated, and off I went to Vero Beach, Florida. And I went through all my ratings pretty quickly. And in Vero Beach, there were no OA meetings, but there was an AA clubhouse, and that's where I went to work my OA program. I went from there I became a flight instructor. I taught at Florida Institute of Technology. And from there, I went to Arkansas and Shreveport on regional airlines. I was the first female pilot here in Shreveport. And I met my husband, who was an FAA examiner at that time. And we've been together 41 years. And as someone says, that's not my fault. I have to credit him. There were many times I was ready to throw in the towel, and he's a good guy. He's very stable and just was committed to make this thing work. When we got married, he didn't want to leave. He's an only child, had a 2,000-acre cotton farm. And so I went back to school. I got my degree in nursing, valedictorian, perfectionist. And my plan was to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I did work as a chemical dependency unit charge nurse and on the coronary intensive care unit. The regional airline went out of business, making my husband unable to be gainfully employed. That was his only career. And so we applied to all the major airlines, and we were hired at an unnamed major airline, the largest in the world at the time. And we went up there as the first married couple ever hired. I started, of all things, on the 747 as a flight engineer, flying the Pacific. And then I went to the 737-300, and then I was captain qualified on the 777 and flew all over the world. My husband liked domestic flying, and he flew 727, the 737-200, 300s, and the 767. When the airline found out about my background as an RN and chemical dependency, I joined the Employee Assistance Committee of the Airline Pilot Union, and I became chairman of the EAP at Chicago O'Hare. And I loved that work. However, my husband and I had a house in Shreveport, an apartment in Chicago. He's an only child trying to help run the farm. His dad was ill. There were many stressors. And I also had unfinished trauma from the sexual abuse, and was very codependent and perfectionistic. And so I relapsed with alcohol. I had 13 years at that time. And I went to treatment and went to group and individual counseling and was tested through the FAA. There's a program for anyone that's alcoholic, and got my medical back and resumed flying. The next couple years were great, and then we hit some turbulence. We had 9/11 and a union contract. His mom got Alzheimer's. His father died, so he had to settle the estate, take care of the cattle operation, and his son, our stepson, got Hodgkin's lymphoma. So there was a lot going on. My brother and my sister both got cancer, and I'm kind of the resident nurse, so I'm the one that went everywhere and helped everyone. And through inheritance and saving and some good decision making, we were able to retire early. And the last 10 or 15 years have been the happiest in my life. There's a couple reasons for that. We have one home, which is a lot easier. I'm sleeping at night because we used to sleep 4 on, 4 off. Good nutrition. I go to anywhere from 4 to 7 meetings a week. And I resumed counseling, not so much that I have to go, but for me, counseling is like a personal trainer for the mind, and I consider it a privilege to be able to go to counseling. And during this last couple of years, I've studied Joe and Charlie and the Big Book and the traditions, and I've always done all my steps, but I've just really beefed up my program. I also carried the shame and perfectionism, and I was able to get over that in counseling through asking the question, how is this serving me? Because there were things over which I'd done 4th and 5th steps and all that, but I still carried shame. And finally, I was able to get over that, thank God. Today, I do a lot of service, in particular in OA and Al-Anon. I have a sponsor in each program. I sponsor 3 people, and that's one of the greatest joys in my life, is listening and reflecting to other people. I bring a laptop and make our meetings hybrid. I led OA 12-step workshops. I've been an OA, or I am an OA intergroup officer. I'm the chairman of the public information professional outreach committee. I've been a region rep, and I was a delegate to World Service. And then in the last 7 years, I joined Al-Anon to further release myself from codependency, because I was the go-to person in the family whenever anyone had problems, and it was just eating my lunch. So I learned in Al-Anon, and I did all the steps, traditions, and concepts. I really committed myself to. I was very serious about it because I was in pain from that codependency. And I've learned to detach and to focus on myself and take good, loving care of me and stay out of other people's business, which has been tremendous. I've also developed a very deep trust and faith. I've always believed, but I've really developed a trust in my higher power, whom I choose to call God, by meditating on scripture and memorizing it. And today I live in steps 10, 11, and 12. And the two of the most important words in the steps to me are the first one, we, but also the word continue. And so steps 10, 11, and 12 is where I live today. I have a handy little notebook from OA that I can write my food plan, my gratitude list, read a meditation, and write on it. And then at night, I do my evening review. And when I have a problem, I'll write out an inventory and call my sponsor and discuss it. I think of the 5 things to keep my program good, which is read the big book, go to meetings, call my sponsor, pray, and work the steps. Another thing that's been really, really good, and it's this weekend, so anyone that wants information of any kind from me, but this in particular, my email is in my little box there, is a 2-way prayer workshop with Father Bill W. And that has been phenomenal. You do not have to have any particular higher power. He's got 50 years of sobriety, and what that workshop is how to get really close to whatever your higher power is and to find the direction in your life. And it's just a wonderful workshop, life-changing. I also joined Toastmasters because I used to be afraid to speak in public, and that has really helped with self-confidence and just helping me to self-actualize, because it's more than public speaking. You can go into writing books, having podcasts, websites. So it's an excellent thing for someone like me. It's really brought me out. And then the last thing that I've been doing is about 1.5 years ago, I started Emotional Sobriety meetings with Dr. Alan Berger. And if you want any information on that, I'll be happy to send. I have a form letter. That has been the cherry on the cake. Emotional sobriety, according to Bill Wilson, he wrote a letter to someone that was depressed, and he said, it's real maturity and balance or humility in our relations with ourselves, others, life, and God. There's a lot to it, but I can give you a synopsis of what it is. I have learned to love myself. I'm a recovering self-hater. And today I love myself, and I give my own self-validation and stop looking for it in other people. If they give it to me, that's icing on the cake, but I don't have to. I used to just people please. Today I have self-compassion. I'm very careful how I talk to myself in my mind, only positively and lovingly and with compassion. And if I start hearing anything else, I stop it immediately and redirect. It's almost like if someone was physically abusing me, I am not going to stand for self-abuse anymore. Had it. I've learned to comfort myself and self-soothe instead of wanting other people to do that for me. I accept all parts of myself, even the stinky thoughts and the stinky feelings. And he's taught me to respect all my feelings, but not give them privilege. To let the best in me lead the rest of me. I give voice to the different parts that may not want to do things. And then the best in me says, okay, this is what we're going to do, just like with a little kid. Although this is the happiest I've ever been in my life, the real goal of emotional sobriety is not happiness necessarily, but freedom. Freedom not to be reactive, but the freedom to pause and think and commune with God and decide what my response is going to be. I've learned to appreciate what is, grieve what's not, to live in the now, which is where God is. And then a huge thing is when Bill Wilson says, whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Today, I tried to actually look at it as a gift, because that is going to show me what my underlying dependency is. So there's an emotional sobriety inventory, which I can show you. And I determine what the underlying dependency is. And then the last column, what to do to take care of myself. I've learned not to take things personally and to self-talk about that. Today, trouble and tension shows me where I need to grow and what's missing in my life. And it's never about anyone else and what they did to me. It's always my reaction is my problem. What they do is their problem, and I can be curious about it, but no one makes me feel anything. I will end with the last page of the 12 and 12, step 12. I love this. Bill Wilson says, still more wonderful is the feeling that we do not have to be specially distinguished among our fellows in order to be useful and profoundly happy. Because I grew up thinking I had to be something big. I was from New York, and that's how it rolled. Service gladly rendered, obligations squarely met, troubles well accepted or solved with God's help. That in the world we are partners in a common effort, that in God's sight all human beings are important. Love freely given brings a full return. I'm no longer a square peg in a round hole, but I can fit and belong in God's scheme of things. That the permanent and legitimate satisfactions of right living, for which no amount of pomp, circumstance, no heap of material possessions could possibly be substitutes. And I love this sentence, true ambition is not what I thought it was. True ambition is the deep desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. The big book says, we realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. Abandon yourself to God as you understand him. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find, and join us. I'll be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit as you purposefully walk or trudge the road of happy destiny. So I say to you, don't quit before the miracle happens, because the miracle happened to me. And I was one miserable person for many years. And by the grace of God, I have a wonderful life today. May God bless you and keep you. Until then, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cathy. I really appreciate your sharing of your experience, strength, and hope there. If you want to stop sharing your screen there, that would be fantastic. A quick reminder to our live audience that if you have a question for Cathy, please type it in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. Looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other, and we'll get to that. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, and I've written down several. Before we get going, I'll ask the first question that isn't official, but as you were reading A Vision for You there at the end, you added a word in there as you purposefully um, trudge the path. I can't remember exactly where you put it, but tell me why you added that word purposefully in there and why that was important to you.
There's a well-known speaker in OA that gives big book studies, and he said, some of the definitions of words were different back in the 1930s, and trudge to us sounds like it's like kind of a bummer, and trudge to them meant to walk purposefully, and so we're walking purposefully.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. All right. I'm going to get to first question here. This is from Nancy B. Nancy says, Cathy, are you out in the spirit of sunlight, or do you have fun? Do you sing and laugh and dance, or just be silly? Or do you just go to meetings all the time and do step work? Also, how much quiet time do you take just to be still?
I definitely have fun. And for me, I love religion, psychology, philosophy. So my meetings and my reading is fun to me. I love that stuff. I eat it up. But I do have, I almost got a motorcycle, and I was afraid I was going to end up killing myself. So I got an embroidery sewing machine, and I have a serger, and they're very expensive. And I love creating things, especially gifts for people in program. I'll make tote bags and book covers and personalize them and so forth. I love movies. I love reading. I have 2 granddaughters, a stepson, a stepdaughter. I have 2 brothers, one passed, and a sister, and we travel. So yes, I have a lot of fun. I have girlfriends too, by the way. I'm going this weekend to lunch, and so there's more to do than there's time.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We had a question come in that I'll go ahead and answer, but you can follow up with this. So the question was, well, thank you so much. Very incredible. How do you get in touch with Father Bill W. and Two-Way Prayer? And the www.twowayprayer.org is where you can get information there. And Two-Way Prayer is all spelled out TWO instead of the number 2. But Cathy, tell us a little bit more about that workshop, or how Two-Way Prayer helps you in your life.
Well, at this point, I can do it almost in my mind. I don't have to concertedly do it, but he has handouts that explain it. And what it is the first people in AA, like the first 100, how they actually did their prayer and meditation. And he has a whole system about it. He learned this from an archivist that he sat down and worked with. And he has a whole thing about, find a special place, and you might light a candle and read something. Because back then, a lot of people think about meditation as crossing your legs in lotus position and going om. But back then, again, words were different. Meditating was focusing and fixing your mind on something. It wasn't emptying your mind. It was concentrating on great spiritual truths. So you read something, and then this is a real nutshell, but you ask a question and you use your imagination as to what you think your higher power is saying to you about it. And he will have people volunteer and do that, and he critiques it so you really understand and you can get the gist of how it works. And then if he gives you any directions, you circle them, and then the next day you look and see, did you do that? Because if you don't do what your higher power says, he'll stop telling you, and probably your heart gets hardened to it. But anyway, what it does is, for instance, it's so heart-wrenching. People might say, God, I hate myself. And then these things come out that are just profoundly beautiful. Like, my child, I love you with a never-ending love. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't be so hard on yourself. And it's just, it's amazing. And but if you're too much in your head or something, he'll bring it out of you. It's just such a great, because the whole purpose of the 12 steps is to get to a spiritual awakening, so you find a higher power that can solve your problem. Well, this is the way to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that experience. I am also to use the word religious follower of two-way prayer. I make sure I do it every day. And follow-up question, this is also from Nancy B that she asked previously. Let's follow up with that. How much time do you typically spend per day in quiet time and connecting with God?
Oh gosh, a lot, because my higher power, I'm Christian, and a lot of times I'll just put on spiritual music if I need to self-soothe. I've learned there's a lady named Kristen Neff, and she talks a lot about self-compassion. You can put your hand on your heart and rock, and I'll tell myself things, or I can picture my higher power actually telling me things. And so all through the day, I actually got a desk chair that reclines, and I can put on something like that and just put my feet up on the desk and just close my eyes and spend time with God. It's the best time in the world. Thanks.
Thank you. Now let's go back to the title of this talk, keep coming back no matter what. In your life, in your walk in recovery, have there been times where you're like, I don't think I need to go back, or you were tempted to be like, I'm good here. I don't need to keep going back. And if so, how did you continue coming back no matter what?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because there was one time I did, and I ended up relapsing. And when I relapsed with alcohol, it's like playing Russian roulette, because you do not know if you're going to ever make it back. And actually, I tried to go back, and I just couldn't get the fire. I would sit there and I knew I needed to. I knew I should want to, but I just wasn't there. And I got on my knees by my bedside, and I was high. And I said, God, I'm in trouble. You're going to have to help me. And I ended up in treatment by the grace of God. And by the grace of God, I caught the fire again. I love this program. But even if you're completely dry and you can't even do any action, I really believe in the idea of bring the body and the mind will follow. And this is a program of action. But sometimes if you have depression, it's hard to even take action. You can ask people for help. Just say, help me to take action, or commit to do one little thing. And the action gets you into a right way of thinking. And little by little, it's like getting a train rolling. The more you do, but if you stop going to meetings, for me, if I ever relapse again, it would be easier to just kill myself, because then I wouldn't hurt anyone else. Physically in a car accident or something. I mean, my disease after 13 years of not drinking progressed so severely. I can't even imagine after 26 years what it would do, I'd be like now. I pray to God I never relapse. And I just know never. And I also know that my bread is buttered here. And so the more I go and the more I work on this, everything else works better. If I put this first, everything else works better and I'm happier. But when I get involved in something else and put this on the back burner, I'm not happy. So it just behooves me to prioritize this.
Thank you. So Nancy, another question from our live audience, and I'm going to preface it with a little background from your talk. You have a a degree in psychology, you have a degree in nursing. So you've got a medical and, emotional, mental type background there. And you've been in the rooms of recovery for decades. So we've got the medical versus the spiritual. One of our audience members just says, I just got a bipolar 1 diagnosis. How have you been able to integrate the medical side of emotions with the spiritual?
I have major depression and anxiety, but I'm doing well now. I'm recovering from that. I am on medication for depression. I go to counseling even to this day because I can afford it, and I have a wonderful counselor. And why not? I think I said earlier, to me, it's like a personal trainer for the mind. And to me, it's a privilege to be able to go to a counselor. It keeps me clean and straight and focused. And before I go, I pray to be honest. And I really try to discern what do I need to talk about and learn and grow about this time, because I don't want to waste time. I want to really learn from it. So I would suggest, the spiritual solution is the number one, but definitely I'm into holistic, that's a nursing thing, nutrition, exercise, counseling, if you need group, whatever meetings you need, programs. And someone was talking about how do you coordinate so many programs, but what I do is I just focus on the one that is most up. I kind of keep a general meetings per week, but if one, let's say I'm more having trouble with codependency, like I've really focused on emotional sobriety in particular, and then Al-Anon, and AA and OA are just kind of the baseline. So when there's a will, there's a way, and that's the proper use of the will.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to jump to this other question. I may come back to that here in a few minutes, depending on if we have time, but I would love to talk a little bit further about that. But first, you mentioned in your talk that you had stopped people pleasing. You had been a people pleaser for a long time and you stopped doing that. What did that look like? What experiences did you have, both positive and negative, as you set that boundary or stopped people pleasing? What kind of experiences did you have in that, and how did that affect your recovery walk?
Well, when I was flying, I really loved my dad, and my mom was kind of a mess. And I put men on a pedestal. And so oh my God, I just tried so hard to be perfect and thin and beautiful and good and sweet and professional and, on and on and on. And if someone looked at me the wrong way or said something, and it wasn't even necessarily true, it was maybe how I thought they were thinking, I could trip out on that. And you'd never know it, because on the surface, I was so professional, but I might go home and just be in tears. Just, he didn't like me, and no, and it was painful. And what I've learned is to just really focus on, what does Cathy need to do? And it's almost always exercise, eat right, clean the house, do my work. When I do all that kind of stuff, when I take care of what I really need to do, I get self-esteem and I feel good. And I don't know if it's partly age and like the estrogen's lower or something, but I'm just not there's just kind of something growing in me that I just, I immediately go inward and I start telling my own self, you're a wonderful, beautiful, intelligent person. And I'll just picture the Lord telling me, Cathy, I'm so proud of you. You're doing such a great job. I love you. Doesn't matter what they think. And you don't even know if they're thinking that. Probably they're not even thinking that. But I just self-talk, self-soothe, do what I need to do. I'm so busy doing what I need to do. I don't have time to worry about trying to fix other people. Or does that make sense?
I think so. Have people come across or come back and said, "Hey, Cathy, you've become selfish. What you used to, do all this stuff for me, and now I'm not seeing that as much." And if so, how do you respond to that now?
I don't think so. It would be interesting. No, I actually, I think my husband's happier because I'm not moody. I'm not teary. I'm engaged and happy, and I still do everything. I mean, I'm taking care of business at home and stuff, but
no. Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that. I guess that's one of my fears. I'm a people pleaser, and a few weeks back we had a guest speaker on that said, if you're a people pleaser, you are dishonest, and it hit me hard. And so I've been walking that path and thinking about that. Okay, what will happen if I stop saying, okay, I'll jump to this right away and make that happen? Will people think I'm being selfish? Will people, hate me? When really it's none of my business, but that's a fear that I have right now in my walk. So thank you for sharing your experience there. That gives me some courage and some hope also on my end. Okay. So on that note, and I think maybe it's already been touched on, but maybe dig a little bit deeper. How do you create healthy boundaries and avoid drama and codependency?
Part of this is osmosis, but going to Al-Anon and the emotional sobriety, it's just happening. But like when I speak to my brothers and sister, I used to send them thousands of dollars. I used to be in their life trying to help manage, fix, and I get one fixed where I thought that person was safe, and then the other one would fall apart. And then I was actually going nuts when I went to Al-Anon. I was like, I'm going to have a heart attack. Well, today, is completely different. When they call, I just say stuff like, wow, that sounds painful. I know you're gonna figure this out. And I've found they just want to be listened to. They don't want to be fixed. And they used to actually worry about telling me stuff because they didn't want me to worry. And so today I'm just I'm detached, but it's not like I don't care. I care very much, but the truth is I never was in control. All I was doing was making myself nuts.
Sounds a lot like living the serenity prayer, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. All right. We have another question that came in from Arlene in our live audience. Arlene says, you said you like to read a lot. Are there any books you can recommend that relate to the program or help your growth in the program? And then a second part. And what was the person's name referred to for guidance time with God? Kristen was the first name.
Well, that was Father Bill W. And that's this weekend. Again, take my email address and I can send you the flyer. On the 2A prayer. I read all the different program books. Of course, on emotional sobriety, Dr. Berger has 12 essential insights to emotional sobriety. And then the one that was most famous before that is 12 smart things. Gosh, I read Christian books. There's one right now. I read this years ago, but it was so awesome, and I finally remembered the name. It's called Who Calls Me Beautiful, because that was a big thing. Like I was never enough physically, mentally, emotionally. and I am enough. I'm more than enough. I'm exactly how God created me. And this is all about that. I used to have such poor body image, and today I don't focus on it. I just get dressed and I try to look nice, and I just tell my own self, you look great today. You go, girl. I used to focus minutia on every little thing.
Thank you. So there was so all of these things that you are referencing here, I will look up and I'll put in the show notes. In addition, I'll put your email address in the show notes also, if that's okay. But you mentioned an author, I think it was Kristen Neff. Is that the last name?
You can look up on YouTube. It's KristenNeff, and she has a website, and she's probably the foremost authority on self-compassion. And on her website, under resources, she has guided meditations and things you can write, exercises, and she has YouTube videos where she explains self-compassion. One of the doctors, a psychiatrist that comes on Dr. Berger, his meetings, this stuck with me a couple weeks ago. He said when you or I do something that you don't like, he goes, instead of that, you stupid idiot, go, oh, isn't that cool? I love that. Just like you do with the little kid, picture a kid that you just love and is so adorable. And if they did something, you might just go, oh, what's going on with you? Instead of that critical, harsh stuff.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'll add all of these things that I've written down as resources you've referenced in the show notes of the meeting. If you have any final questions here for Cathy, I've got one more, but if anybody else in the live audience has another question, please type it in the Q&A link. We'll try and get to it here. Oh, we just have one that came in, and I'll read it right now from Nancy. Do the people you are friends with help and support you? And do you know any old timers personally? And does that help?
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, I have a really great core group here in all three. But I mean, I have OA friends here and I think one of them's here today. We can talk about anything. It's really awesome. And in Al-Anon, and there's old timer meetings. And I'm an old timer.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you. My last question is just this. Do you have any final words of wisdom for us before we start closing down this meeting?
A few things. One is I am just completely loving this emotional sobriety work. I think, someone said that Al-Anon is charm school for AAs, but this emotional sobriety is like your PhD. And I cannot, maybe it's not for you, but it's a lot of people are finding Bill Wilson called it the fourth legacy that's never been realized. And the main meeting's on Thursday night, and it's fun. There's like 3 or 4 other counselors. Dr. Berger will talk usually, and then they chime in, and then they open it up for sharing. And it's fun. We laugh. It's just interesting. It's food for thought. It's fantastic. It's really given me so much more freedom and joy. And keep coming back no matter what.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cathy. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to hear more and learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have other questions, please go to RECO12.com/forum and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that may come up. I invite the audience to keep coming back. Come back next week. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever, please go do so now. That's a great way to work our 12th step in sharing this message with others. Next week, we have a great speaker lined up. We'll hear from Cheryl S., active in the rooms of recovery for 28 years, whose topic will be from humiliation to humility. And I'm really looking forward to that. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the Step 11 prayer that Cathy will be voice for. Have at it, Cathy.
Page 99 of the AA 12 and 12. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there's hatred, I may bring love, that where there's wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there's discord, I may bring harmony, that where there's error, I may bring truth, that where there's doubt, I may bring faith, that where there's despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there's sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It's by forgiving that one is forgiven, and it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Cathy. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of